Hello and welcome to the Services School Stories podcast. You'll hear from veterans and partners who'll share their stories and insights about how you can use higher education to transition from the military and achieve your goals. Now let's get going. All right, welcome to the podcast. Our guest today is the one and only Chris Cappy. For those of you who follow him on social media or on Task and Purpose, he's a man who needs no introduction, but for those of you who don't, he is someone you should follow, and he has had an incredible career trajectory. So he started out as an infantryman in the National Guard. He deployed to Iraq. He came back and used a GI Bill to go to NYU's film school. From there, he parlayed that to a career in media and entertainment, where he ended up on Task and Purpose. And most recently just got back from Ukraine, where he was doing some frontline reporting from the conflict there. So Chris, great to have you on the podcast, and I'll turn it over to you to just give like a little bit more of an in-depth introduction. Would love to hear your story, where you came from and how you found yourself into the military and the National Guard.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me on, first of all, Alec. I really appreciate it. It's exciting to be able to share with people some of my background, because I don't often talk about who I am or really where I come from on the channel a lot. So I'm happy for this opportunity. I grew up on Long Island in Setauket, and my dad was a conductor on the railroad. It was kind of like middle class. Didn't have a lot that I really needed to worry about growing up. So I felt like, I needed some discipline in my life. And that's why I enlisted in the military. But my whole trajectory through the military and through school was very unconventional. I first did 1 year of college at the School of Visual Arts before I enlisted in the National Guard. But that first year at SVA, I felt like there was something really missing from my life, because I'm just kind of getting drunk off 40s every night and smoking a ton of weed. I don't know if I could talk about that on here, but my life wasn't it didn't have meaning and purpose in the way that I wanted it to. So after that first year of film school, I was kind of I know how to use a camera. I know how to use editing software already. I grew up learning that stuff. So I sort of felt empty inside, and I thought there's got to be more to life than this. What can I do? I'll enlist in the military. And I enlisted in originally the Army National Guard in New York. And then as soon as I was done with basic, I thought I was going to hate it, but I ended up enjoying it. And then I was like, my unit in New York wasn't deploying for years. So what I did was I volunteered to deploy with the next unit leaving, which was the Pennsylvania National Guard, out the 56th Stryker Brigade. So they were a Stryker. It was the first National Guard Stryker unit. Sounded cool. It was we'll get to be in $1 million vehicle. Great. So I remember asking my captain, I was like, hey, can you sign this paper to release me from the New York Guard to go to the Pennsylvania Guard? He was like, so that I could deploy to Iraq. And he was like, why the hell would you want to do that? You could stay here and chill. And I was like, no, I really want to go. So deployed to Iraq. Then when I got back, that's when I transferred to NYU, because when I applied to NYU out of high school, they were like, no, your grades aren't awesome. You're not really great. But then once I was a veteran, I think I was like a diversity hire for them basically at NYU. Sorry if I'm just rambling, but that's some of my background.
No, not at all. And yeah, one thing I left out is Chris and I crossed paths shortly after I left active duty. We're both interns on the Daily Show in New York City. I was doing Chris is more of a full-time intern, and mine was just they called it an externship, where I was part of a cohort of vets. They're showing around and showing the ropes too. So, but just quick backtrack. So what interested me is your desire to go into film early on. So when you were in high school, is that something you always wanted to do? Did you want to be a director, editor? What did you want to do?
Yeah, ever since I was a kid, people make jokes about me having a bit of the tism for weapons in the military, but it all started when I was a kid. I was obsessed with movies and TV, and I was the kid in the bus. I didn't realize they were making fun of me, but I realize it now. Like on the bus, they would ask me to name all of the people in the Batman movie, and I knew every cast member by heart. Like I was kind of that weird kid that knew every single. It was like Michael Keaton was Batman. They were like, do it again, ha ha ha, you weirdo. But I've always been obsessed with like movies and TV, and so I just from when I was probably like 6 knew that I wanted to do something in film and TV. And when I went to film school originally, like the plan back then, there was kind of really no YouTube back then, and there was certainly no YouTube career path. So it was all music videos. Everyone was like, we're going to make music videos, we're going to do big productions, and it's going to look professional. And the goal was to shoot on film, and everyone wanted to shoot on film, and digital was like crummy. And nowadays I'm like, if I have a phone to shoot with, like it's all about the content. But yeah, like to answer your question, I've always wanted to tell stories. I think fundamentally is I want, and yeah, that's I think what I've always wanted to do.
Yes, and that's really cool. But what I find really interesting is, so you're going to film school. We don't really think of film school as like the recruiting ground for the military. So as a first-year film student, what drove you to enlist and specifically want to go to Iraq? Because that is not something a lot of film students want to do. And I hazard a guess that there weren't a lot of people in your cohort that were thinking of doing the same thing.
Yeah, I remember the moment was when I realized I was like, I am old enough, and I grew up very conservative, grew up like my father and listening to like talk radio, and you're constantly hearing like the war in Iraq is the right thing. And so I'm at college and I'm telling people like, the war in Iraq is a good thing, and very unpopular opinion. It was ridiculous, and in hindsight, kind of a ridiculous thing to be going around yelling. But some student, I remember a student was like, if you really believe that, if you think that the war in Iraq is so great, like why aren't you there? Why are you here in film school chilling? Why don't you go and deploy? Like, why don't you go risk your life then? And I remember thinking, like looking in the mirror and thinking, having that self-reflective thought of, he has a good point. Why am I for this thing if I say I'm for it, but I'm not willing to actually invest anything in it, any skin in the game? And I had to think hard and long about that. And I realized like, this could be a way for me to figure out what my actual beliefs are. Because a lot of times people say they believe something, but their actions are not congruous with it. So they don't align. And it was in that moment that I was like, maybe this is something I really want to do. And so I went and started talking to recruiters and decided that if I was going to do the military, like I wanted to do infantry. And that's kind of how that happened. There was, of course, other things, already leading up to it. I was feeling like, you watch the videos of the planes hit the towers, and at 18, I'm thinking like, this war is still going on. Why aren't I doing something to help? Because I felt like my country gave me so much, and I felt like the least I could do, whether it was right or wrong, was like to be there for my country.
No, that's really cool. And I mean, I guess, as also being a New Yorker, having been pretty close to, to ground zero, has got to have been a pretty powerful motivator for you as well. And interested in the timeline. So you said you did 1 year of film school. Like while you're in that year of film school, you're talking to recruiters, figuring out the National Guard thing. You go to your basic, join your National Guard unit, and then make the decision to deploy to Iraq. What was that whole timeline like between leaving film school to finishing your deployment? Like how many years out of the I guess the college pipeline did you take?
That was like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, because my original plan was I'll go to boot camp and basic over the summer, and I'll come back, and then I'll go back to college. And my original plan was like I'll probably then finish college and then commission as an officer, and that'll probably be what I do. But I ended up as soon as I got back from boot camp and AIT infantry school, I was kind of institutionalized by that point, and it's a very culture shock to go from boot camp to art school. It felt like alien to me. I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. I felt different. It seemed to me like it was unresolved. Like I did all this training, I did all this work, and now I'm just gonna like go to school. It didn't feel right for me. And then so the deployment, I'm back. Like so that's 5 months, and then after the deployment, I was able to link that up with some other buddies of mine from boot camp that I'm still know that they were like, hey, let's all hop on this deployment basically. And so we got that sorted in like 3 months, and then I'm back from training and deployment like a year later. So it's like about a year and a half, 2 years.
Wow. So that's wild. So you basically that was a quick in succession getting on deployment. So you basically like went to boot camp in AIT in the summer, back in art school, hanging out, and then just Iraq that fall
That winter, yeah.
or that winter. Wow, that's pretty. That must have been pretty intense. What was the? I guess you know how was it for you to adapt to being over there? Because I mean you've just gone from art school to Iraq in almost no time. That must have been pretty intense.
It was whiplash. It was very like extremes of when I was in boot camp, we had there was a terrible tragedy where a soldier was stabbed to death in my platoon. It was like the first murder at Fort Benning in decades or something. And so I saw something very traumatic there. It was a terrible, terrible case. And then once I was in Iraq, I saw a number of people killed there, and that kind of, I mean, I really grew up a lot very quickly. I was 19 years old. I was the youngest dude in my entire unit. Like I was the baby of the group, and I think being that young and not understanding those things and not understanding the dangers was difficult on the mind, especially for that amount of time. Like a deployment for you're in country for 9 months and like be under the stress of possibly you're gonna get shot or blown up day in and day out, and then also no real like pressure release valve as far as you know you can't drink. The only thing you can do is smoke, and there's no like it's not like in Ukraine where you could just go see your family or friends like at some point, or you can come off the front line. You're just like constantly in this kind of crappy situation with a bunch of other people who are pent up and no real release. So that it was I didn't notice. I like when I was there, I was fine though, but I didn't notice how much it kind of affected me until I got back, and I'm trying to adjust. And as soon as I got back, I knew I wasn't going to go straight to SVA, so that's when I put in the transfer to NYU. Well, sorry, no, actually, so this is what I mean by it was unconventional. I went to Brooklyn College for a bit and loved Brooklyn College, and while I was there, I on a whim put into to transfer to NYU. Sorry, I'm throwing my whole life
No, no,
story.
no. I mean, that's what we're here for because I mean, it's just such a wild story, right? So you were art student to grunt, and you were in Iraq in a pretty hairy time. So you're like airdrop there, fresh out of film school into Baghdad, seen some pretty heavy combat, and then just coming straight back and going to art school.
So I'll say it wasn't a very hairy time. It was a weird point in the war. It was solidly the occupation phase of Iraq. So it wasn't like this. It was right after the surge. It was basically we were like the mop up cleanup crew for the surge phase. The guys that we ripped and replaced were really in the thick of it. And they were the ones that set up. So I lived on like a little combat outpost right outside of Baghdad, near Camp Taji. A lot of people will probably be familiar with Taji. I was in Mushada, which was like a football-sized tiny outpost. And the guys before us, they set up that outpost. Like they were the ones that pushed into the middle of a village and put up concrete walls and were like, okay, we're going to do patrols out of here. For me, it was, you know, there was a mix of raids, a mix of guard duty, a mix of patrols, but it was this point of the war where it was Petraeus is like, we're going to do hugs, not bullets. We're going to do outreach. We're going to give money to the community so that they don't attack us. It's it's a really interesting part of the war, I think. The not that surge, not the invasion, but just sort of the most depressing and like I don't know how it's like a depressing part of the war.
Yeah, well, still, like you're 19 years old, like going on raids in Baghdad. So that's still pretty intense, and not something a lot of film school students do.
Yeah.
And then just talk to me a little bit about getting back, because I'm not super familiar with the decompression that the Guard has, because coming on the active side, I know I deploy, and then we'd have like a stand down, some decompression time, some leave time, and so for you, when you got back, it was basically you just sign your paperwork and go home, or how did it work out?
Yeah, something that the Guard was doing, I don't know if they still do it, but they were like, okay, you're done with your deployment. Like, no training, you don't have to show up for 4 months. They just cut everyone loose, which at the time I was really stoked about. I'm like, sweet, I don't have to drill for 3 months. Like, nice. But in hindsight, you're very disconnected from your unit. Like, you can get into a lot of trouble in 3 months, and a lot of dudes did. And yeah, there wasn't a great transition. I don't know what the right answer would be. Like, how do you handle that for the every branch and unit, has it difficult. One of the unique difficulties of the Guard is you're not, you just went through this thing, and then you're not with those guys. You're just back thrown into civilian world, and it can be a bit of a culture shock. But I knew that I was adjusting when I went to Starbucks and they got my order wrong, and I was like, okay, cool. Like,
Yeah, man. But just did you get any type of mental health? Do they have any type of mental health support or anything like that, or just like go take your 4 months
yeah,
and figure it out?
yeah. I think with the VA, like, it's always there if you need it, kind of. And there were resources for sure, and there was tons of there was tons of debriefs that I totally tuned out for. They have you in the debriefing, and they're like, if you need help, let us know, and we're all just checked out, like ready to be released. So
Yeah.
yeah, it could have been worse.
Yeah, no, I got you. And then coming back, how did the timeline look? I mean, NYU's got what arguably the world's best film schools. Was that something you said you did it on a whim? But can you talk us a little bit through that process? So you got home, and then how are you looking at higher education as as your next steps?
So it's interesting. Something you were talking about is like how to kind of leverage education and how to build a career off of it. So when I got back, I didn't want to go to SVA because I felt like it was only film classes, and I wanted more. I wanted to take history. I wanted to have more of a rounded education, as far as like I wanted math classes, science, even if I'm terrible at it. So I went to Brooklyn College, and they offered that, and I loved Brooklyn College. It's kind of like a community college in Brooklyn, and it's very inexpensive, and I got to learn more about who I am, what I want out of life. Without, basically, when I was there at Brooklyn College, I felt as though NYU would provide a similar education, but would give me more sort of, they open doors. It's kind of, I don't know if I sound negative saying this, but it's not disgusting, but it's like unfortunate that doors are opened based on like where a person might go to school. Like, I feel like I know I wouldn't have gotten the Daily Show internship, and then subsequently be hired there as a production assistant full time if I hadn't gone to NYU, because places like the Daily Show don't even, I learned this later, they don't even look at other schools other than they're like, okay, we're going to take two from NYU, two from UCLA, two from this school that one of the writers went to because, he wants to help out that school. So, like, unless one of the writers went to Brooklyn College in your year, there's several schools that they just pick from. At least that's how they did it then. I don't know if that's still how they do it.
Yeah, no, I had that experience a little bit doing the in the negative sense. So I didn't know that was a thing. So I mean, I showed up in New York, was able to to swing that, it was through American Corporate Partners. Like they call it like a Veterans Integration Program. But at the end, I was like expecting the opportunity to try to interview for a slot. They're like, all right, well, you did great, Alec. Have a good one. Time to figure things out. So I probably should have looked at going to a more prestigious film school. But so that's actually a really great segue, because the question, like my next question was going to be about going to film school, because a lot of our listeners have a GI Bill, they're coming off of active duty, they're interested in film and media, and with YouTube the way it is, all social media content creation and all that, do you think there is still value in going to film school, or do you think it would be better or time better served for our listeners to just get out there and just do it themselves?
It's very easy for me to say, like, don't go to film school, because if I could do it again, I would have preferred to like to get an education in foreign affairs or in history or in business. But I'm happy with how things worked out for me, but I do wish that I had taken, because I have everything that I learned in film and video, as far as all of that, I feel like I'm mainly self-taught. Like I taught myself how to do video editing, but there's value in it for sure for people who are interested in, especially if you haven't been doing like video editing since I was like 15, working on bootlegged versions of Pinnacle Editing Studio. So there's definitely, I think, value in it. Yeah, yeah, and you don't have to go to NYU to end up doing well in social media. It felt like it was a bit of a fast track. And I'll say Jon Stewart in particular, a lot of people don't know this, but he's like super veteran friendly, as far as he goes so far out of his way to like help veterans get positions here and there. And he was visiting every wounded soldier at Walter Reed, like just really tremendous programs that they have there.
Yeah, I mean, Jon Stewart's just one of my all-time favorite people. Like, he was the reason that we got that program set up there. And they were trying to get, like, one veteran through ACPs. Like, why don't we just open up to, like, a dozen of them? He came to, like, all of our meetings and all that. Both him and John Oliver were so involved, and the advocacy he's done for the veteran community has just been so impressive. So, yeah, I'm with you, man. Jon Stewart is a great American. And so I do want to, like, that is also another good transition to getting on the Daily Show. So number one, I'm actually interested to hear how you're coming off a deployment and going back to NYU. How are you just doing mentally? Were there any issues you're having adapting with your classmates? I take it you're probably one of the only veterans there. And so essentially, how did you get yourself, squared away mentally when you got back to campus, and how did you relate to your fellow students?
I was pretty terrible at first, as far as like I would get into fights with not like heated arguments about Iraq, and people would say not nice things about my service. And I had one classmate cried one time when I was talking about what my perspective on Iraq, and it just the conversation upset them. Like, just the idea of being in a confrontational, because the students there probably never met somebody who deployed, and never met somebody who had the point of view that I have, and kind of growing up a sort of right-leaning person, I felt like a very much an outsider at NYU, which I guess I'm okay with. It was definitely an adjustment. It was difficult. I didn't make a ton of friends at film school. Like, I stuck with my friends from the Army, and it's difficult for me, particularly just because I have such a different point of view than, everyone there was somebody's kid and saw the world very different than me. So it was a rough transition.
I mean, that's really interesting, because I think a lot of our veterans have similar challenges on campus, where people might not necessarily understand I guess their mindset or their desire to serve, or where they're coming from. And I guess the question is, you said you felt a little isolated, and you just reached out to your friends through the Army, and that was kind of your core social group, your key support network there.
Yeah, and if I could do it over again, I would take myself less seriously. It's hard to not, when you're hearing everyone complain about getting up at 8 in the morning and you're like, I've been getting up at 5 in the morning for the last however many years. I after NYU, I learned that I'm like, oh, these people are actually, they're just trying to relate to me. They're asking dumb questions, but I should give them the benefit of the doubt. And if they're asking me if I ever killed somebody, just like make it into a joke instead of getting all butthurt about it. If I could do it all over again, I would take myself way less seriously and give like definitely just give people the benefit of the doubt and the most charitable interpretation of like what they're trying to say to me. Because I remember one time I was talking to a police officer and I asked some really stupid, probably insensitive question. And then I realized I'm like, this is probably what those people are doing when they ask me something dumb about my service. Like they're just trying to get to know you. So that's kind of my advice on that.
And how long did you spend there at
At
NYU?
NYU? So it was 2 years at NYU when I transferred in. I did the last 2 years.
Gotcha. Now, how big was the program? Like, how many people were there in film school?
All of the entire film and TV Tisch at NYU is 250.
Pretty decent sized cohort, and you were the only veteran. Yeah, we actually I don't think we've sent service school has sent anybody there. I'll have to double check the figures, but yeah, we might potentially get some more applicants after they hear your story. And what was what was your off ramp? So you said so it was a Daily Show internship. You parlayed the Daily Show internship to a role as a production assistant there.
Yes, the internship went well, and they called me up, and they were one of the PA. They only have 3 PA positions. One of the PAs left to go do something else, and they called me up, and they were like, "Do you want to be a full-time production assistant?" And I was super excited. Like those people, they are kind of like a family there because they spend so much time together. They're like constantly with each other. You're there from like 8 in the morning to 8 at night. And it was that job is more like a lifestyle than a job. Becoming a production assistant there was exciting. I got to learn how you churn out episodic content on a almost daily basis. I got to learn and see how they did that, which was just insanely valuable. Like I might have disagreed with a bunch of what the show said or whatever, but I always believed that Jon Stewart like totally believed in what he was saying and was a genuine person and like wanted the best for the world. It was really exciting to be there.
It's awesome. And how much time did you spend there, all told?
Between the internship and the PA work, it was a little over 2 years.
Good stuff. And then, what's your career? And so, I'm guessing, was this like 2015-ish, like 10 years ago? You wrapped that up.
Correct. Yes.
Given the math, we were 2013. We met up.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. It was 2015. I left the Daily Show, and it was a very difficult decision to leave because they were promoting me right as I left. And they wanted me to be like the media coordinator, which I would be in charge of the tapes. And I was kind of like thinking, I love these people and I love working here. It's so much fun, but like I've reached the ceiling here. I'm not gonna ever be a writer because I just don't share the same mindset, and I'm not gonna be a director here. And if I am, it's gonna take 5 or 10 years to be it. They promote from within frequently, but it's like, I don't think I could do the tape library for 5 years. And so it was difficult, but I took a job in tech doing the marketing for IBM. I was their internal video producer for all of IBM researches, like communications, communicating how they do sophisticated technological things to someone like me, like an average person. How do you get an average person to understand that? So that was how I left the Daily Show.
That must have been a really different vibe going from the Daily Show to a big corporation.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It was so, I remember saying things and seeing the look on people's faces and being like, oh, you can't say that here. Like, Like at the Daily Show, you could curse, you could say you were encouraged to say the most terrible things, or like, everyone was going out and getting wasted after the show. And I'm like asking people to get a drink or something, and they're like, I have kids I have to get home to, you psycho. Like,
Oh man. So all right. So I take it. So you went from the Daily Show to a slightly less fun, slightly probably hazard a guess more lucrative gig at IBM, and then talk us into how you became a content creator.
yes. So at IBM, I learned a ton I didn't realize it at the time, but I was really learning all the things that I needed to do once to create content, because I was learning how to communicate difficult subjects to a wide audience. So I'm learning how to, at IBM, I'm making videos about their quantum computer, I'm making videos about their robot AI systems, and we're posting it on YouTube. It's getting 200 views or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It's still like I'm learning how to communicate effectively in short form web content. And from IBM, I go to Cisco, and I'm working in Cisco's internal marketing department. And there, it's a well-oiled machine, their internal video production. So I'm seeing they're doing a lot of people on green screen, and these subject matter experts are explaining sort of just on teleprompter, like outlining something. And I'm realizing, like, this is something. It's these things are sort of floating in my head that I will later put together for the YouTube channel. But at Cisco, like, I enjoyed working in tech, but it wasn't creative. Like when you're working for a giant brand like that, you don't have much say. It's the brand is very powerful and it has the say. So that was when I transferred, or I saw a job posting for Task and Purpose, and I was like, this could be perfect. It's about video. It's about military. Which is something I know. They're looking for a video producer, video editor. So like I started there not on camera. I was just doing like putting together DVids videos and editing it together and posting it up on Facebook. And, there was no plan for me to like do any kind of on-screen stuff.
And then, how did you make the move on screen? Were they just like this guy's got a face for TV, so let's get him up there?
I think what happened. So Patrick Baker hired me there, and good friend, really great, amazing dude, and he was encouraging me. He's just like, dude, put up whatever you think would be good. Just put it up, try it. If it sucks, great. Let's try something else. And he was very supportive in just experimenting to find what worked. And so which like no company does that. No place lets you just throw darts at the wall and lose money for like a year of just creating absolute crap and finding every single thing that did not work, until someone in the comment section wrote, hey, Chris, how about instead of making jokes about the striker and being sarcastic about the striker, like, why don't you tell us something actually valuable about the striker? And I realized, there's an audience for learning about military tech and geopolitics. And so I was encouraged to go outside my comfort zone, because I hated being on camera. I hated like delivering lines, and it felt weird to me. And I didn't like the attention either. The idea of like all these people watching, and then, the negative feedback was difficult for me at first. People pointing out every weird thing I didn't know about myself. Like they'll tell you in the comments everything. So that was an adjustment, but I have a thick skin, so I was just like, I'll just keep at it. And I wanted to prove them wrong. Like a lot of people were saying how terrible I was at it. And I thought, if I keep these feedback of people saying you suck, they're also giving me the key to what I'm doing wrong. And if I genuinely listen to their negative feedback and pull out what I actually need to change in between the like, why does your face look weird in between that, the stuff that my mom wouldn't tell me. Like my mom's gonna say everything you do is great, and that's nice. But the people in the comments would really give me the constructive feedback for how I needed to change. Yeah, and that's how we kind of incrementally figured out what worked
So that there is value into jumping in the comments section. So,
early
um,
on. Yeah.
yeah, no, and so all right, this is awesome because this like we've been recording a few episodes of the podcast already, and like this theme just keeps coming up about resilience and not really taking failure or harsh feedback or criticism personally, just kind of picking up, moving on, and so how like the question I have is talk us through the early days where you read that first negative comment. Like, how did you get support from Task and Purpose, and how did you, I guess, surrender your ego and move forward over that criticism and use it to improve and make a better product?
Yeah, it was really just swallowing my pride and realizing, because I was like 29 or 30 at that point, and I was starting to feel, I'm like, I'm not going to be a TV director. That's not that original dream, or like the TV or a film director. Like it's not happening. I've failed so many times at like reaching something that I wanted to do, and I thought maybe it's me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I need to listen more to what people are telling me. And so once I started doing that and trying that, I noticed things would improve and get better. And we're going from getting 300 views to getting 1,000 views. And so I just kept doubling down on like, I need to not be so, not listen to my ego. And then the subscribers are going up, the feedback is getting more positive, and we start having a couple of hits. Like I suggested, hey, let's throw videos up on YouTube. YouTube's going to be big, and when I was able to prove that slowly, then things started taking off. Like I really thought that Facebook wasn't probably going to be the future of video. I thought YouTube, at least for the time being, would be that. So I knew enough about video editing that I edited for the first like year or two. It's been 6 years now. The first like 2 years, I did all the editing, I did all the writing, I did all the research myself. And just because I had to prove something. I had to prove that this was something that could drive revenue. And once the sponsorships started coming in, I knew, okay, there's something here, and we can keep doubling down on what's working. And so what? Yeah, once the sponsorship started coming in, I realized this could be something. So you got the Raid Shadow Legends were coming in, and it was for not much money, but I thought, what if we just keep doing what we're doing? This might grow into something.
Well, and what did your team at Task and Purpose look like? So it was Task and Purpose is a military, I guess newspaper's not the right word, military news site, and so you were there, yeah, publication, yeah, and so you were solely responsible for all the video content creation for them. Is there anybody you had to answer for that, or like people questioning your numbers?
In the beginning, there was a bit, but the company changed so much. Like it went from a startup, veteran owned, to it was bought by private equity, and it was bought out. And so leadership changed a bunch of times, and it went from now I'm the head of video, and now I'm in charge of the video production for Task and Purpose YouTube. But that took years to earn that and to get there. And now I have one full-time employee working for me, and I have like 4 freelance video editors and several researchers that help with the drafts. Like I basically I took the model that I learned that they do at the Daily Show, where they have writers, they have pitches, they have the video editing part, and I kind of tried to take that model and do it for the military publication for the military news, essentially.
And are all those people in your, I guess, in your organization there, like you're talking about, like researchers, freelance editors, and all that? Are those typically veterans, or are those a mix, or who do y'all get for those roles?
Yeah, most of the researchers and writers that help with that part of it are mostly veterans. We have a Coast Guard veteran. We had a Marine veteran that was working for us. We've had a lot of veterans, and almost all of them are from the viewers. Like I put out a community post saying, "Hey, does somebody want to? Do you watch the show?" Then those are the people that research and write with me, because I feel like they understand what I'm going for and where I'm coming from.
Well, that's really cool. So for our listeners, so how does that work? So if you've got a particular topic, you're pitching, you put it out to the community, and I take it if you're subscribing to your channel on YouTube, they'll see that. And if they want to take it upon themselves to do some research and make a pitch for you, they can go ahead and do that.
Basically what I did was 2 or 3 times where I put out kind of a call where I said, write 500 words on this topic, essentially. It's not kind of an open call, but every so often we do it. We reach out. And that's where I've met a lot of the team.
Oh, that's awesome. So I do want to jump. I know we're running a little short on time, so I do want to touch on your trip to Ukraine. So for me, like I've been following you for a while on social media, and actually, then just quick thing, how did it feel to get internet famous? Like, do people recognize you, or how does that work?
Yeah, a lot. Sometimes, especially if I'm at like a gun range, people will come up and say, "Are you Chris Cappy?" And I love it. I always love when I get to meet people, because we have such a nice community. We have such a supportive community. So I feel very fortunate, and it's something that I try not to take for granted.
But do you ever bump into any of your haters in the comment section who will just criticize you to your face, or do they just like to hide in the comment section?
Oh man, no, yeah, never anyone come up and be like, "Hey, you're that jerk that I saw online." That hasn't happened yet.
That's great, yeah. But to me, the really cool thing I've seen is, so like, number one, saw you on the Daily Show. It's like, oh, this is a cool guy here, and then like I see you popping up on Task and Purpose. Like, heck yeah, like he did something for himself. That's great. Like, see you getting all those clicks and all that. And then next thing, I'm seeing you like out in Ukraine on the front lines, and I'm like, wow. He went from telling us about the striker to being a full blown war correspondent. So can you just talk to us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, it felt like the next natural step, and I feel like there's more steps that I'm envisioning for growth in the future of what beyond war correspondent can I aspire to do, essentially. But that transition, doing that, was, I knew that I wanted to go to Ukraine at some point, but I wasn't certain in what capacity. I'd been covering the conflict for like 3 years, and it started to feel like if I really want to explain to viewers what's happening, at some point I'm going to have to go. Like, I understand counterinsurgency war, I get that piece. I've seen what that's like, but it's so different from what a near peer high intensity war is. Like, the insurgents they couldn't call in airstrikes on us. They couldn't call in artillery on us. And you've served in Ukraine. You know how different of a kind of conflict it is. So I felt like, to maintain any kind of like credibility, and also just personally for myself, because I feel like I've been something of an advocate for Ukraine on some level. I've also been critical of them, but like largely I have been an advocate. So I was like, I felt like I got Iraq wrong. It turned out that the people there didn't really want us there. And how could I be so wrong about that? And I thought, maybe I'm advocating for Ukraine, and I go there and it turns out that they're awful people and I'm wrong. So I wanted to, on some level, go and like find out for myself if the news articles are a reflection of reality. And so United 24 Media reached out to me and they said, "Hey, do you want to come to Ukraine and do some reporting?" And it's very vague. It's kind of, I wasn't certain if I was going to go to the front or not. And you don't know. A lot of it is up in the air, and you don't know until you take a 17-hour train ride from Poland to Kyiv, And then you find out if they like you, if they trust you, if you trust them. Like, a lot of things have to go right. So my expectations were low. I didn't think that necessarily I was going to do war journalism. I thought, I'll go there, I'll meet some of their politicians, I'll hang out in Kyiv. But opportunities presented themselves to be able to go to the front, and I trusted the people that I was with. The guide that I met there was an outstanding gentleman, and so it kind of just happened. It wasn't 100% the plan.
And how long were you over there for?
It was a crash course of 2 weeks where we went from Kyiv to Izium, Kyiv to Kharkiv to Izium to Zaporizhia, and then to Kursk, and then straight from there back. We drove something like, I don't know, I think it's about over 2,000 kilometers. We spent several days we didn't sleep. Like, we were up 37 hours for some days.
Pretty intense. You created some great content there. And what I loved about it was just, it was unfiltered in its truth. Like, when you're, as someone who's actually there reporting directly, it's not coming through any lens, it's not being spun by anybody. And I, as a viewer, I really appreciated that honest take. And if for our listeners, are there any observations you'd like to share that they might not have heard through the lens of, media reporting or podcast hosts or things like that?
So what I did find, I felt, was that these people are very much, their sensibilities are very similar to America. Their values are very similar to Americans. And I felt more so than when I went there. I was like, these people are, if there's a good investment, then I feel like it's Ukraine. I've met a lot of people that I just related to. And it was, for me, it felt vindicative. Was that the word? It felt like, okay, it's a relief that, that these people, they're fighting for their homeland. There are difficulties there that I didn't get to talk about in all the videos, like people essentially being pressed into service for over 5-6 years now. They sign a contract for 3 years and then they're just kept in their contract. Like, there are large amount of desertions happening. The situation is critical. It's not a rosy picture. Even though I'm rooting for Ukraine, I think being honest is also probably good. And the battle's not going great for them, which to me means all the more reason to, give them what they need to hopefully end this war. That's just kind of my perspective, seeing it on the small piece of the picture that I saw.
You have a lot better perspective than pretty much very few people have as strong a perspective as you do. So I really appreciate you sharing that. All right, so we are coming up on time. So I would like to just turn it over to you. You've had just such a wild journey and done some really enviable things that I'm sure a lot of our listeners would aspire to do. So what's, some parting advice you'd have for them, someone who's might be just wrapping up their service right now, thinking about college and say, I want to be the next Chris Cappy. What would you tell them?
I think that they should reach out to me. If somebody wants to, that's something that I've done. Having a mentor is beyond important. Like, finding somebody who, maybe they don't want to be the next Chris Cappy, maybe they want to be the next whatever. Like, reach out to that person, email them. You'd be surprised to see that 9 times out of 10 people are happy to tell you. Like, I've had a bunch of people in my space ask me for help, and I feel like the more people that are successful, the better for our space, especially if they're good people. And so I always share I'm an open book as far, probably too much giving away trade secrets of how to do the YouTube stuff, but I love seeing other people do well at it. And so many people have helped me on my journey. I didn't get to talk about, but basically there was some mentors who helped me learn how to scale up, how to go from making 1 video a week to 2, and learn how to delegate and work with other people in an effective way, and how to manage people, which was something that I wasn't great at. Now I manage a team. So my advice is just reach out to the people that you want to be like and ask them for their help.
Awesome, Chris. Thanks so much for all you've done and for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Thanks, Alec.
That's all we have for this episode. Join us next week, same time, same place, where we share more service to school stories. Service to School Stories is hosted by Sydney Mathis, Chief Program Officer, and Alec Emmert, Service to School CEO. Our podcast is produced and edited by our Director of Communication, Amanda Tobias. Service to School is a 501c3 nonprofit providing free college admission support to transitioning service members and veterans. Join us next week and follow us for more on your favorite social media platforms.